Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. And can you call the roll for us?
Mayor Condrey?
Here.
Mr. Richmond?
Here.
Ms. Cash?
Here.
Ms. Sibsey?
Here.
Ms. Lally?
Here.
Mr. Bonnell?
Here.
Dr. Zollett?
Here.
Okay, looks like everybody's here, huh? Great. Do we have any citizen comments today? Okay. Next, we have approval of minutes from April 2023. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes before we make a motion?
Chandra is listed twice under the staff. Is that on purpose? Is that
She was doubly present.
Extra attention.
Extra important.
Any other?
No, because I had to revise it, I forgot. I made a change.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from April 2023?
So moved.
Second.
You have about 3 seconds.
I know.
Pick one and pick one. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, minutes have been approved. The financial report for April 2023, any questions on that? Do we have a motion to file the financial report, receive and file the financial report for April 2023?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, financial report has been received and filed, and next we have an education presentation on another form of cancer, prostate cancer.
This is the last in my series of cancer screenings, just so you don't think this is going to be forever ongoing. And prostate cancer screening is pretty much the most debated one of the 3 main ones we've been talking about. So, okay, here we go. Thank you. All right, so prostate cancer. The prostate is part of the male reproductive system. Helps manufacture and storage of semen. Prostate cancer is the 2nd most common cancer worldwide. 5th leading cause of cancer death among men. And most are adenocarcinomas deriving directly from abnormal prostate cells. So the estimates for this year are roughly 288,000 new cases with 35,000 deaths. The risk factors are age. As you get older, you're much more likely to get prostate cancer. Above 60 particularly, most cases are diagnosed around age 75. So age is by far and away the biggest risk factor. Family history doubles the risk if you've got a father or brother who have had prostate cancer. If you're of African American or African ancestry, increases your risk. And obesity has a 34% increase in death. I didn't know this one. So it doesn't increase your chance of getting prostate cancer, but you have a 34% increase in mortality if you do get prostate cancer. Screening is what's the big debate right now. Used to be did a digital rectal exam done by the physician in the office annually, and a blood PSA, prostate-specific antigen. PSA tests will go up as we get older, typically as people get benign prostatic hypertrophy, so as the gland gets bigger, your PSA will naturally go up, but if you get prostate cancer, the thinking has been that it goes up much more notably, so it was a marker to watch. The DRE exam in particular is pretty much gone by the wayside, and the PSA is the one that's really under a lot of debate now. We're finding prostate cancer much earlier, which kind of improves your 5-year survival because you're just finding it early. It doesn't really prolong your life. But what they're finding is it does not change the mortality rate. So we may find it earlier, we may treat it, but if it's already metastasized, it's already metastasized, and it doesn't seem to impact life expectancy of the person with it. MRA really isn't a screening, it's more of the diagnosis. Once you've had an abnormal PSA, you've gone through testing, though now the biggest thing or latest thing is MRI to see, does it look confined to the gland or does it look like it's already spread? So treatment, again, kind of comes into what is our goal. If you're 80 years old and your life expectancy is 7, 8 more years because you have multiple other medical problems, are we really going to put that person through a radical prostatectomy, pretty aggressive surgery with typically long-term complications, or are we just going to watch them? At at that age, it's a slow-growing cancer, it's pretty non-invasive. So the best treatments at this point for people with a shorter life expectancy is just watching it. Monitor it annually. Again, the MRIs come into play, you can kind of watch what it's doing. If it seems to change aggressiveness, you can always change your treatment program. But surveillance has really become a big hallmark of treatment. If they're younger, their life expectancy is quite long, active treatment, you've got two components of that: non-surgical, which is giving testosterone blockers essentially, which for most cases will halt the growth. Eventually those will fail and the cancer will get around the hormone blockers and start back up, but it'll delay any significant progression for quite some time. Radiation is a big one now too. Instead of going to the radical prostatectomy, radiation for prostate cancer has been around for decades. It typically was not a great treatment because the beam was kind of broad. There was a lot of colon involvement, rectal involvement with the radiation, so you had a lot of proctitis from it, which gave guys long-term diarrhea problems and a lot of complications from it, so it was not ideal. But now with Gamma Knife, it's become much more specific. They use injection chemicals that actually protect the colon now, so radiation has become an extremely effective, relatively non-aggressive treatment. And then if it is metastasized, there is chemotherapy to try to, again, slow down growth and any further spread. Surgical, take it out. Kind of the gold standard of treatment in years past. If you've got prostate cancer, going into a pretty aggressive surgery that takes the whole prostate gland out. Guys oftentimes were left with problems with incontinency and impotence problems. Those have improved with robotic and nerve-sparing surgeries, but it's still a pretty aggressive radical surgery, and again is more for the younger patients who get at a young age, probably a little more aggressive form of the cancer. And then 5-year survival. So many things play into prostate cancer as far as the age of the individual, what's their life expectancy, what's their comorbidities, how well are they going to tolerate the treatments, but also the staging of the cancer. How aggressive is it? How much of the gland is involved in the cancer? So it's not as clear-cut as in treatment as some of the other cancers, but 5-year survival is obviously very good as long as it's caught pretty early. But again, is that really because we treat it, or is that just because, when do we catch the cancer? If we find an aggressive cancer today that someone never screened, they're going to die a year from now. But if we caught it 5 years ago, they're still going to die a year from now, but their 5-year survival goes up. So the numbers are a little tricky to interpret, but if you're able to catch it early and it is localized or even regional, your 5-year survival obviously there is very good. With distant metastases, it's obviously not so good, but it's improving every day. The current chemotherapies are much better. Bone is probably the most common metastases that it goes to, so back pain, particularly the spine, becomes kind of the hallmark of distant metastases. And so you palliative treat that and try to keep the cancer from progressing as long as you can. And that's pretty much my prostate cancer in a nutshell. Any questions?
What do you mean by 5-year survival?
5-year survival is from the time of what percentage of patients from the time of diagnosis will live 5 years?
Okay.
At least 5 years. So that's kind of a standard measure of cancer treatment to know that, you may not cure it, whatever the cancer is, but what's the odds of that individual living at least 5 years from the time of diagnosis? And that, again, is kind of a catchy measure because the same goes with lung cancer, kind of ties into the same idea. If we start screening everybody at earlier stages, you catch a lot of abnormalities that maybe aren't cancer, and you may catch certain lung cancers at an earlier point, but they're already aggressive. They've probably already metastasized. So they're not gonna live any longer than had you found it 2 years later. If you find it 2 years earlier, may improve their 5-year survival because it looks like they lived 5 years, but they didn't live any longer than they would have had you not caught it.
What's the overall fatality rate? Obviously we all die at some point, but of people who have prostate cancer and then ultimately die from it.
know that number, but I do know there were studies that there's multiple studies that showed in Europe and the US that 30 to 60% of all men over 60 who die of other causes, unrelated to prostate cancer, have prostate cancer but just hadn't been diagnosed. So it's much more prominent than we even have diagnosed and have found. But again, it never gets found because they die of something else.
Right.
It's oftentimes called a cancer you'll die with, not from, particularly as you get older. So if you are that 70, 75-year-old man who gets diagnosed at that time, again, do you go do a radical prostatectomy or just kind of watch it? Because, again, the odds are you're going to die of something else before the prostate cancer kills you.
Yeah, I was thinking that it was one of those cancers, old people cancer, certain things that you'll just get as you get older. I mean, with men.
They find
I
it
mean,
in a lot. I
yeah.
think it's even, I thought it was like 75 or 80% of
Right.
people, men that die over.
Well, as the age goes up, the
Yeah,
percentage
they
goes
all
up.
have it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
if you do it.
Yeah, if you live
It's
long
not
enough,
gonna do anything.
every guy will get it, yeah, that's what
But
the old saying is.
it's there, it just doesn't do anything.
Right, and another misnomer, again, we talk about disparities in health. African Americans always think that they're the only ones getting prostate cancer. You know, they always think,
Well.
yeah, they always think, I said, no, it's not a white men too. They're like thinking, they're trying to castrate our men. I'm like, no, it's not a white men too. But it's just, I mean, it's just that part of, you know, the cancers that, that's pretty typical. Just like diabetes, they say as you get older, you're more likely to get hypertension, diabetes. It's just I think your parts are wearing out as far as the parts that gives you those stabilizations of.
Yes.
Yeah, those pots.
You know, the DNA just starts getting kind of old.
Yeah,
and As it's
yeah.
reproducing, starts to make mistakes.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well.
Gets us into trouble.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
a great one. Questions or comments about prostate cancer?
And I promise I won't do any more cancer for a while.
Or things that with obesity.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just teasing.
That is
I'm
recurring,
kidding.
that is the recurring theme there,
Okay, I
yeah.
know it, right? But that makes sense. That does make sense, because it goes back to your lifestyle and how you're eating and the things that, yeah. So, cool.
Thank you. Our next topic's old business, FAB.
Fab. We have CHA tomorrow, I think. So we're still doing the surveys, and then the survey closed, so we're getting ready to get the survey results tomorrow. And then looking at the focus group. So when we do the big surveys, you hand them out to all the people in Butler County, work or live in Butler County. And then when you glean the material, you try to do closer, what they call primary data. So focus groups from people and drill a little closer. So we'll have another meeting tomorrow and get the results back to you soon. It looks like it's always those big three, and it kind of covers everything. Chronic illness, which is always gonna be your diabetes, heart disease, or whatever. Mental health, which is always gonna be overdose and or suicides, those kind of things. Infant mortality, those have been the three large ones in the state and every smaller health department. So we'll see if it comes out to that, which it will, but we can go in different directions, how we wanna look at those things. And so, to be continued, like we could switch from overdoses to suicide, or depression, or loneliness, or, you know, in the mental health category. So, more to come, but that's it.
Okay. And then tobacco 21.
You have any update in any of that? I don't know if we can discuss it in open discussion, but we were just reminding the whole board that we passed the ordinance last year, right? And prepared to move forward with licensing in January. And it would just depend if we want to amend our ordinance, if we want to put anything else in there, like, you know, the conversation, like if we decided density or anything like that. But I was at a conference, I was texting Mayor some of my slides, Tobacco 21 people, the prevention people can come speak to the Board of Health again with any detailed questions, as well as council at any time they're ready to. So if we wanted to get any more information answered, we can move forward with what we're doing, the education of our businesses, and in January just start licensing without doing anything. And I do believe at any point we could come back and amend our ordinance, or we can do something before. So it would be completely up to you guys.
I
or
feel there's
we
an
can do
education session needed to
Okay.
council on youth tobacco use,
Mhm.
its prevalence,
Mhm.
its health impacts, and also within
Yes.
health impacts, I'm hearing there's actually even more that we're finding that's
Yes.
only coming up recently because it's gotten worse than
Yeah.
it was, so.
That presentation was excellent. They had 4 people presenting in different areas, and they were talking about even hookahs, and I didn't know a lot about hookahs. They call them water pipes also, but they had professors from Ohio State or whatever doing a lot of it, and they said that although it is water, the heating element underneath it to heat the water up is coal, and you're getting all the coal byproducts inhaled. And they're seeing that a lot of the hookah is glycerins, and so it's a lot of sweeteners in it. That's where you get the taste, but the sweeteners and the molecules and stuff are becoming issues in the lungs too. It was a whole lot of information on that presentation. So,
Yeah, I think the most education needs to come from the vaping side of it. And I think that there was concern from council about the vitality of business. So if someone gets a tobacco retail license right now, and we put a retail density in place, when they go to sell their business later because they're retiring or whatever, their business is not worth what it should be because they've grown a business that is heavily reliant upon tobacco sales. And so then they would not be able to transfer the license because we have a density in place, and so people lose the license, and then thus the wealth of their business that they have created is no longer there. So that was the biggest pushback that I heard. But I think that there also was just a general maybe lack of education about the prevalence of vaping specifically in our youth. I think there were some thoughts that maybe it wasn't as big of an issue as the Board of Health tend to believe. So facts would be helpful.
Yes, and Carla has, the numbers kind of vary because they close and open, but I think we are around 68. Did you say around that 68 mark?
Yes.
As far as businesses, and of those businesses that are solely tobacco, is less than 10?
It's around 9 or 10, of course, yeah.
That's solely tobacco, so when we
Is
say.
there a separate license for solely tobacco? Or does it distinguish? It doesn't, right? Okay.
I don't think so, because they were saying that, and that's another thing, Tobacco 21, they're trying to get, some of the vendors don't even have tobacco license, although they're supposed to have tobacco license, isn't that correct? But the bigger ones that we're talking about, the Krogers, the Myers, the Speedways, those kind of thing, they don't derive 50% or more of their business is for other products, right?
Right.
Other than tobacco, so we'll look and see, but they were saying that some of these places open up and they don't have a tobacco license. They just have a vendor type and and then they just start selling tobacco. So that's what they're trying to, capture as well, so.
I think it's called a cigarette dealer's license.
Is that what, yeah.
What's the difference? I mean, what is the difference? Do you have a license to sell tobacco or you just sell it? I mean, it's the same endpoint. I mean, what is,
Right.
they're just getting money for the
taxes.
taxes.
The taxes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
If I can add in there too, I mean, and I'm not a big regulatory person, but in our school system, in the last 3 weeks, we've had 3 kids who were caught with vapes. All 3 contain THC, and they're buying them from Middletown. So you've got stores there's just so little regulation on this right now, that you've got stores who can order from California. So you've got distributors in California where recreational is legal, and they'll ship any product they want to order to Ohio. And so then they're putting these products on the shelf that have low percentages, but still contents of THC within them, and the youth are going in and buying, over the counter, low grade, low percentage, but still THC products that are just easy and cheap to access that are technically illegal. And I do think there are stores that we don't, there's stores that are doing it correctly and part of their business model, and there are stores who are selling everything to anybody. And so if we're gonna weed people out, obviously, we know who we wanna weed out. And, I don't think most of us have much sympathy for that business model.
It's a tough discussion because you know, on one hand, if you say you don't wanna limit because of business, then we need to lift all moratoriums on everything business related, like marijuana sales. I mean, we could, like dispensaries, we have a moratorium on them in Middletown.
Mhm.
So if we're gonna say we don't wanna put restrictions in place on, you know, tobacco retail density, then how can we say that we don't believe that we should have other types of similar businesses? So I don't know, I find it to be a very sticky conversation
It
very
is.
quickly.
You know.
And then should we lift all alcohol, you know, retail density restrictions? Can we? Because if we have those in place, it's the same argument, so.
Absolutely. I remember it was a time and that we did not want strip clubs. We did not want a whole lot of buy here, sell here gold stores or pawn shops because you wanted to control some of the, you know how sometimes you have all these strip malls and you have these places that tend to lead to, right? And so you can control some of that. So it's all the above. And last but not least, I'll say it over and over again, whether it's legal or not legal, people need to look at addiction, period. Because right now it's all the gambling, that's legal. And then your kids are getting to the gambling things earlier,
Right.
that's addiction. And again, it's still, I mean, so if we're gonna get into is legal or not legal, or are we gonna get into what's kind of better for people if we're trying to have a healthier community? So it becomes a bigger discussion.
Yeah.
A bigger discussion, yeah.
No, it's all about money.
Well, you're right.
It's money. It's either you know, sell them whatever and get the money, or have some kind of
Mhm.
moral character
Decency.
and not.
I mean, yeah, we're coming at this under tobacco 21 purview, right? So we have to look at, if we're looking at putting retail density restrictions in, it needs to, in my opinion, but it needs to come under the purview of trying to keep our youth from getting at tobacco, right? Because that's the whole purpose behind the licensing.
Mhm.
So whatever we decide, we need to come at it from that angle, otherwise we're no better than, you know, Capitol Hill putting stuff into a bill that isn't related to the bill, right? So I wanna make sure we're looking at what is the goal, and this goal particularly is to keep our youth from vaping and not the greater part of society from getting addicted. Now, we also know that that is an issue.
Yeah, and
So-
what's good about that, I love that you said that. The whole Tobacco 21 thought process is to make it harder for youth, right? As well as using the funding to educate youth. So for people
Right.
that do not know, and you can help me with this, both the medical doctors in the room, I don't think that you can prescribe patches and like nicotine gum and that kind of stuff to minors, right? And under 18, because some of the treatment, they were saying conflicts that, so now some of the educational people, prevention people are trying to go into the schools with cessation programs different than we do for adults, right? And so we're trying to educate youth. And, cause doctors can't, they can't give patches to kids, and if they're addicted to nicotine, then what other ways do you help them get off the tobacco? And so those are some of the things too. So you're right, but that Tobacco 21, to our credit, would start educating kids how not to start doing it, and if they start doing it, different techniques and stuff to wean themselves off of it. So that's what the money goes back into the programming.
Another restriction we have in place in Middletown is, downtown, I think we still have a moratorium on, correct me, exact terminology, but medical facilities. It was an attempt to keep, like opioid addiction facilities from going in on Central Avenue, because they were starting to pop up all along Central, which was not exactly for the growth of the economic state of downtown Middletown, what everyone really wants to see there. But we had to then broaden it to all medical facilities, because you can't be that specific legally. So now we've got that moratorium, right? So we just look at restrictions in government and where are the lines, right? Like where are we stepping too far into our ability to do what we want as Americans, which is our constitutional rights, and then where are we doing doing it because it's needed for society and a greater good, and anyway, that's where we're at with it. I don't know, also, I had legal looking into who's even, if we had retail density, is it just the Board of Health that approves that change and council has nothing to do with it? Because if so, it's more of an educational piece to council, but if council needs to approve it in the end, we need to all get on the same page, and we may even need a work session between Board of Health and council at some point, so.
I think that would,
I would think it would need to come from law, which way would be the best, whether it would come from zoning aspect or the city aspect or the Board of
Right.
Health.
Yeah, so I did ask, I thought
you
I
did.
asked,
Mhm.
the legal team, like, what is the process, who needs to approve it? Because that's where we need to focus particularly, or,
and then the
Communication
Tobacco
efforts.
21 people said that they have, in the different places in Ohio, the different ways they did that too, so they could consult us. I mean, when they talk to us, they can say how other cities and their legal teams have done it. But it would have to be something in conjunction with zoning so that they would know. Because I guess zoning allows people to open up, and then if they start selling, you know what I mean, it's kinda after the fact. So it'll have to be all
Yeah.
the department.
at a minimum, if we
departments
did
have to.
the proximity, what do we call it?
They had, I have to look at my slides, cause they had 3 different type. It was density, and then it was proximity to youth services or
Mhm.
something like that,
Yeah.
library, parks.
Yeah,
I'm trying to look at those PowerPoints. Carla, can you remember the other ones that, cause they had one called capping. I didn't know what that was.
and there may be a third option, instead of limiting the retail density to population, we could look at something like, however many exist right now, that's our cap. I mean, that could be a compromise in some fashion, so that the current businesses who are in Middletown don't have any long-term, impact on their vitality.
They had 4 strategies that were successful, that had been implemented in the US and that are legally sound, they said. One was capping. Capping is to cap the number of retailers in an area, generally based on population size. 2, declustering, prohibit retailers from being in close proximity to one another. And school-based, prohibit retailers from being close to schools and youth services. And then pharmacy-based, prohibit the sale of tobacco in pharmacies. And I know CVS, I think it's a pharmacy that does not sell tobacco. Certain pharmacies that, so they were saying that these were kind of strategies and restrictions, and
Right.
reductions. So, this is my PowerPoint from the conference. So I can send you all this, Amanda.
So what are the next steps in determining this? Because I feel like we could talk about it and then it just goes nowhere.
Well, the next education, we could bring Tobacco 21 in to not only give us the update of things, or at any following subsequent month. And then we'll have a chance at Q&A. And then, or invite some of the council in at that time, or
I
have
almost
at
feel
a
like-
council meeting,
I feel like we should do a workshop with council.
or like a special,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if they're gonna present to council, I wanna know when, cause I wanna be there. for
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it would be good for the Board of Health to be able to talk with council and give your opinions on, where things should go. We need to have in place though from legal, like, what are the processes so that we even understand roles and responsibilities.
right. Do you call special meetings? Is that
Yeah, I
how
can
it's
do
done?
that.
So you can just let us.
So the easiest time usually to do them is before a council meeting, because just the coordination is easier. It's
Mhm.
easier for council members to be like, yeah, we're all available. But I don't know if that works for anybody, but like it would be a Tuesday, first or third Tuesday at like 4:30 is when we would often call one. I don't know if everyone's available then or not, because we meet then. No, okay. We
Are
can work
most
on
of-
it.
Yeah,
I
are
don't
most
know.
are most able to come at 4:30? If had to? Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like most people will. Because those are, for you, they would be taped. They're in session and taped, so we can maybe talk about it as well too. Do you wanna have it at the same time, or do you want Tobacco 21 people to come in to talk to us first? Or do you want it all at the same time?
Yeah, that's a
We
good
can go
question.
live.
how long do you think, cause an hour, like, we would be
Right.
restricted to 5:30 start time for council, right?
Right,
So,
right.
but sometimes having a restriction on time isn't bad. I don't know how long they would present.
Well, I mean, this meeting that we had was like, I think it may have been an hour, but they can, I mean, all those slides do not have to be in there. They can just touch on what we're seeing in Cincinnati, Hamilton, et cetera, because they have, you know, they're all involved intricately with all these Tobacco 21 things across the state. And we can tell them, or you can talk to them and say what we definitely wanna know, and they can do, if we said 20 minutes,
Yeah, I think 20 would be a
and
good
then
amount of time to get
10
it.
minutes for Q&A? Is that?
Well, that
is
would really be the
30
rest of
minutes?
the meeting. I would like to keep them there to then have Q&A available, but also
Mhm,
discussion
right.
between council and
Right.
Board of Health.
So, I mean, they probably can do anything, you know, a 15-minute presentation is long. So a good 10-minute presentation to hit the points, and then Q&As come
Right,
up after
yeah.
that. We can do it that way, so.
I feel like in order to nip this thing and get it going in the right direction and people kind of, I don't know, being bought in whatever direction that is, I feel like we should have a discussion, because it did blow up, not just at council, but on the internet and all the places. It's the hot
Good.
topic, so,
So you just have, you'll let us know when
yeah, so the next.
they can call it, and then I can get in touch with Wendy and Christina.
I would say
and-
probably, I don't know how late is too late, but if we just plan for the first meeting in June, so June
Okay.
6th,
I'll be out of town.
out of town, okay, we wanna make sure we get enough people, so, I mean, I could try to get it on next Tuesdays if people are available on the 16th, otherwise it would be the 23rd of June.
The 20th of June?
Sorry, wrong month, 20th, yeah.
Yeah.
So either the 16th of May or the 20th of June. Do you guys have a preference?
No, the sooner the better, obviously.
Yeah, I'll see if people are available on the 16th, and if that doesn't work, cause it's kinda short notice, then we'll try the 20th of June. Yeah, I'd like to get it going while the topic's kind of fresh, but also depends on when they're available.
I think they can make themselves, I think that's one of the things, so I
Okay.
will double check with them, unless of course they're on vacation, but I'll see which one's best for them too.
Okay, I will coordinate the council side, we'll talk and,
How will we find out?
Jackie or Amanda will email everybody, right?
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the-
as soon as, I think we're gonna see when the mayor can get it on the schedule, I will text Christina as soon as the meeting's over, to see if she's available the 16th or 20th. All we would need is Christina or Wendy, both of them
Okay.
are the,
And I would sincerely ask that, if we do a meeting with council, be just as vocal as the council members, because they do, your voices are really important, and they, like, I see this happen with, boards and council, and it's like, the boards all of a sudden get really quiet and council talks, and then it's like a one-way, street, so you, make sure you guys speak up and say what you're thinking, cause don't let the council chambers intimidate you.
Oh, I can do that. I have no problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else for Tobacco 21? Okay, new business, travel authorizations.
none,
None, okay.
we're grounded.
All right, and then we have board member topics, open discussion. Does anybody have any topics they'd like to bring to the table?
I just have a question. I was looking through all this paper and everything, and on this, what is it? City Middletown Budgetary Control Report,
Mhm.
you have like $1 million some for COVID.
Yeah.
And I see they're only using a very small amount now, obviously because COVID's. And I was just curious, what happens, that money is allocated, or what happens, is it there, or it's not there, or they just, what is that?
That's a good question. When we have emergencies, usually when we had H1N1, we were given a lot of money. Health departments were given a lot of money, federal and state money. They go into your budget and they carry over. Most health departments carry over the money. So it's still there, and it's carryover money. So the city subsidizes the health department, And so we haven't probably been subsidized by the city for probably a couple of years because of COVID. So the money is virtually there, but when the money kind of goes away and the city starts giving us, I think we were up to 500,000 subsidy or whatever, then that's where the money's pulled from. So it's like a carryover, but it's there.
So it sits there, so it's like a rainy day fund, I guess?
Yeah,
Just
I mean, they
when
owe
you
it
need
to us, but it's just like virtually, I mean, it's in our coffers. The, health department and courts are the two of the departments that has their own carryover and usually are not subsidized, but in lean times, health department's been subsidized by the city's general fund. And if you look on the, budgetary control, you'll see it we'll get money from Public Works upstairs. We always say upstairs because we do sewer for them and all that kind of stuff, so they give us usually about 50,000 a year or so, and then we get subsidized from the general fund. Most city departments, I always love for people to know this, most city departments are subsidized by the general fund because we just don't make money off our residents, you know. The only fund, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the only fund that really makes money is Public Works because of the water and sewer and all that, and taxes. Those are the two financial departments that really can support themselves.
Not makes money
No,
like
that can
profit,
support
but
no,
has a revenue
that-
stream.
yeah, have a revenue stream.
I was
Thank
like,
you.
I don't
Correct
think they're
me.
making money.
No, but it has a revenue stream and that kind of supports itself, right? And so most other departments, health department has revenue streams, but usually can't support the whole. So that, yeah, so the money is there, so but those are all the funds that's coming in, like right now, if we get the workforce development grant, which I think we did, that's 400,000. But it's used for new workforce development, so we have to pay contracted workers, or we have to, training, it helps staff with training, it helps staff with bonuses.
But you have that money now for a while then, I mean, if
We've
you got
had-
a million some,
Yes.
that should carry a little
Yeah.
bit of the way.
Yes, we have workforce development 22, where's Chandra? 22, and now we're getting workforce development 23 that will last us until 2027. And that was the money that comes to the department. That money's supposed to really, truly support the workforce development. So training, education, people can go back to school, hiring of public health staff, because they knew during the pandemic how the staff was so short and how you had to ramp up to make everything. So that's Olivia's back there, that's where Olivia's coming in. Yeah, look, she's like, our good epidemiologist, which, yeah. I'll speak about Olivia really quick when it gets to my, report time.
Are there mental health things we could do with any of the COVID money?
Absolutely. Well, right now, Atrium's foundation is doing a community navigator. They're trying to get a grant from Interact for Health to put a behavioral navigator down at CBI, and they're working with the health department, and we can maybe support that position as well down there.
Behavioral navigator.
Yeah, which would mean often when people are in crisis, they don't know if it's treatment related because they could be addicted to some kind of substance or mentally health related. So they want a navigator that can help them through the right processes. Ruth probably can speak to this, but it's my understanding people just put people in one category, and they'll take them into treatment, and they could be bipolar, or they can take.
Right now, the hospital has a substance use navigator to help people who come in addicted to substances. So I'm thinking the behavioral
Right.
health navigator would be somebody who will navigate the behavioral health system, getting them the right treatment for
Right.
whatever behavioral health issue they have.
Right.
Because there's tons of, well, I shouldn't say for mental health, there's tons of resources, but there's a lot of resources out there, and it's just so much for social workers to try to navigate on top of all the other things they do. So it's great that they have this. It's kind of sad that it's to the point that you need a separate person for each ailment, but yeah.
But we do have the money if anybody thinks of anything to do programming and do more trauma training or do more resilience training or do it. I mean, we have.
Is it
that
something
kind of-
that you might be able to partner with the Hope Squad at the high school?
And I think they had something the other day.
Or middle
didn't they
school
say-
too, they
Yeah,
have
yeah,
two.
two of them.
Yeah.
I think they had something Saturday, I
I heard they have like the
believe.
walk for hope,
Mhm.
I think.
Yes, but we can partner with them, we can, help. We're trying to do some of that with alignment, right? To start doing things, if we see other people doing things, support those
Right,
things.
that's what I'm kinda
And
getting
not,
at.
yeah, and not doubly doing them. Also with that grant, we told, the Atrium Foundation that they may wanna get community, like, what do you call it, like community navigators, because often the mental illness or addiction comes to families and friends first before they get to systems. And maybe we can do, like sometimes when you hear the active shooters, people behind the scenes said he was depressed or she was, and we're trying to get to, maybe get the information out to communities and the families and friends to report first or say, I need some help, so we can kind of start bridging that incident or start bridging the whole escalation of whatever they're gonna be. Often we talk to families and they didn't know who to call before all of the things happened. And so we're trying to kind of bridge some of that together. There's a lot of talk, because there's a lot of gaps, and it's a lot of gaps in it. Courts can see it, jails can see it. I think that our police chief said that they usually use Butler County Jail if they're having mental health crisis, but now the Atrium's supposed to be doing more with that. They're supposed to have more more behavioral, systems in place, working with, have you heard of Samaritan Health?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're working with them, and they'll take them from everywhere, and they have in-house residential. And so we're just trying to connect those dots.
One thing kind of on that topic that I was gonna bring up, someone recently mentioned to me, we were talking about homelessness and mental health and people with, I don't know what to call it, psychiatric issues that end up on the streets, that ultimately, where is there really a place for them? We talk about getting people up on their feet and becoming fully fledged citizens. Well, for some people that may not be possible, right?
Mhm.
And how have we gotten to that point? And they mentioned that we really don't have any psychiatric hospitals or mental health institutions anymore. I guess Lakeview used to be one locally, and there was another one. And overall, all over the country, we went to this situation where we said, well, it's inhumane to put people in a psych ward, right? And I think we're seeing the ramifications of that manifest itself out now onto our streets.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is obviously it's a much bigger discussion than Middletown, but is that something that we as a county, or well, it's really a state thing, should be looking into, is maybe going back to having facilities where people can be, it's far less humane for them to be living on the streets, right? And so, I haven't been a part of any of those conversations. Are the conversations happening?
That was done with Kennedy in in the 60s?
When they start letting those out.
I know, it was when I first started to go to
It was,
medical
yeah,
school.
long-
And
Yeah.
what their plan was, basically, here's what it was. They said it was inhumane to have them in hospitals, because they were warehoused and blah, 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 So their great idea, thanks to the government, was to get rid of all the hospitals and have community health, mental health units. Well, that's what they did. They emptied all the hospitals, all the psychiatric hospitals in the whole country, and they put them all these local, And what happened there is, first of all, you had all different kinds of psych patients. You have mild, and severe. The other thing is they gave them medicine, and a lot of people felt better and everything. So I think, what happens with psych patients, I'm not an expert, but once they start feeling better, they feel like, oh, I don't have any problems, I'm now better, which you're never better, and so they stop taking the medicine. So it goes on itself. So when you don't take the medicine, then you go right back where you were. So that's how they got all the homeless and all this, because they stopped going to the clinics, and then again, it's money and blah, blah,
Right.
the whole thing. And right away, that's how you've arrived over the period of the last, say, 40 years
Absolutely.
to where we are now.
Absolutely. And then you have people coming out of the military with,
Yeah, with,
PTSD.
and
It's all over.
depression and, with
Depression.
COVID.
Mhm.
They've got all these things, I don't follow it much anymore, but, for depression and young people and suicides and all this stuff, it's all just, you know, they have nowhere to go. And they don't have enough psych professionals.
Now, we
They don't have
have,
enough psych doctors.
Longview
or
was the one you were saying, Lakeview, it was
Yeah,
Longview that had
Longview.
it, that was around
Longview,
here.
well, yeah.
But we have Summit now, that doesn't have enough beds in Cincinnati, and those are residential, those are hospital, but you only, the crisis unit is the crisis center that Butler County is speaking of, they're talking about 7 days.
Well, then you have, well, you hold people
I'm
for, what
talking-
is it, 3 days,
Yeah.
72-hour
Yeah,
hold or
right.
something?
Yeah.
Well, what are you gonna do if somebody's having a, you know, acute crisis,
Right.
psychiatric, you know?
Absolutely.
And 3 days, what are they gonna, how are they
That's
gonna
what
do
I
in
said.
3 days?
It's just a mess, and yeah, we may
It
need.
is a mess.
But what about this? This is a long time ago when they were saying it was inhumane to have those hospitals, but what about the hospitals just doing the right thing? And I'm like, just like orphanages.
Right.
Right?
They were being
Orphanages, they were
abused.
saying, oh, people are being abused, but what about having a nice, clean, well-ran orphanage
It's like
for people that really
retirement
need?
facilities
Right.
or whatever, same
Anything
thing,
like that.
yeah.
Same
Well, by
thing.
definition too, I mean, you know, to knock the hospitals, I didn't spend that much time in them, but it's, you know, it's a difficult problem. If you have people that are really psychotic and everything, you know, that can't function really, and you have, you know, wards on wards of that, it's, you know, it's not gonna be like going to the Ritz. I mean,
Right.
you know, it's so.
Right.
It's a tough job.
At
It
least,
is,
at
yeah,
least,
for
you know,
sure.
at least you had a place where you did have professional people and people trying to help them.
Right.
When you turn them out in the street and they don't have any place to go or no, to get their meds or anything like that, to me, that's much worse, but.
So prisons turn into the place that
Yeah, well,
ultimately, a lot
yeah,
of them,
that's-
really,
yeah.
ultimately, a lot of
Right.
them end up in because,
Well,
and at
what do
least
they
it's
say,
structured
60%
and
or
it's
something, I
medicine
saw.
and, yeah.
60 or 70% of the people in the jails, like in Cincinnati,
Absolutely.
are psych patients.
Yeah.
So it's shifted the financial burden from the
Mhm.
medical state side to public safety, also communities, yeah, and like our economic vitality, of course, also is impacted, right? I mean,
Right, absolutely. And what bothers me is, like you were saying, mental health, right? And we talk about compliant patients. That's an oxymoron, because if you have mental health
You can't.
issues, you can't be compliant. It's just, you're just not stabilized enough, you know what I mean? So it's just typical that you would want to come off your medicine. Or it's typical that you wouldn't get your medicine because you start sliding down that slope. And so it's the worst
Well, some of these
person to be
medicines have
responsible.
have bad side effects.
Right.
And they don't wanna, you know, it helps them psych a lot, but they can't take it because the medicines make them feel bad and everything, they don't wanna take them, so they stop also. It's,
and there's holistic solutions in some cases, but I'm talking about the people who, I mean, they're never going to get to the point where they're a functioning citizen, right? And I this came to mind because I visited a certain facility in Middletown recently, and I mean, 90% of the people who are in there who are homeless, they probably belong in a psych ward, and I'm thinking like, how is anyone gonna ultimately help you get somewhere where you have your own place to live and you are getting groceries on a regular basis and taking care of yourself? Like, I just don't see it happening, and so now they're just stuck in a system that just doesn't work for them.
Absolutely.
And it's worse for them in the end,
Absolutely.
and it's definitely worse for the community, so. I just kinda wanted to throw that out, cause you all have more experience in the health world than me, and before I go, charging up to Columbus and talking about anything to anyone, I thought, let me circulate some thoughts and just see what our Board of Health thinks.
well, they know what the problems are, it's easy, I mean, again, what did we say, or I
Money.
said,
Money.
it's money.
But really,
It's all
this is a
about
shift
money.
of money allocation in the end, in my mind, because really, we're paying for it elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
So how do we shift resources so that we're putting it in the right place to be effective?
At the FCFC council meeting Wednesday, the Mars board had a SWOT analysis with the people there and said, what are their strengths, their weaknesses, the whole opportunity and threats. And the whole group of people that were there said, you have a lot of money, because right now, think about mental health. They have a lot of money. They keep getting a lot of money because everything is mental health. Everything is mental health, because it's mental health or addiction, right? So they're getting all that money and they funnel money down to organizations. And everybody in the room said, get a plan. mental health and the housing people should get some kind of plan that maybe the county can work and other counties can work. Because that's where, they always say we need more transitional housing. They always say that we need more recovery housing. They always say we need more. And so those two entities that have a lot of the funding should come up with some kind of community plan, and that's what everybody in the county was saying, because everyone, and I know Middletown will say we have ours, but everywhere there is homeless people. They're in Mason, they're in Westchester, they're everywhere, Fairfield, they're Oxford, they're everywhere. And so we need to come up with a comprehensive plan, because what's happening is no one's taking this ownership of this problem. So everybody's saying, city council, you do something, and everybody's
Sure.
health department, you do something. It's public health's problem.
Well, they
and-
used to be state facilities, right? I mean, I think they were run by the state. And to me, that makes the most sense, because otherwise you're looking at these geographical regions that everything bleeds into itself anyway.
Right.
Well, the thing is who politically stands up for those people? You know, their constituency of homeless people, and, I mean, who's gonna stand up and fight for them? I mean, you know, you've got all these other people, again, comes back, it's a political thing too. I mean, you got all this, you know, they look at all these other things and the really important stuff, you know, oh, we gotta have the, you know, more places sell vaping stuff. Well, because, you know, we bring in money, or we, you know, and now the homeless, well, we don't want,
Yeah, what do we do?
it's an age-old problem that, again, the politicians made worse.
So maybe we look at,
What else is new?
institutions. Do you know, Ruth, how many beds are at Summit? I know that,
I don't.
yeah, they have allotted beds for the area, right? I think I've heard anywhere from 7 to 13 allotted beds for Middletown. And so they said, but the beds are always full, or somebody else gets them or whatever, but that would be something to look into, to how that's measured, but it's just probably not enough, everyone. Do you know anything about, it's a lock unit down in Cincinnati, it's been around for a while.
About a half mile
You had to
from my
do
house.
you had to do clinicals down there for your mental health clinical.
Yeah, you did,
Yeah.
it's like every nursing school goes to Summit.
But if you look at Linder, that's in Mason, that
Oh,
is
that's
beautiful,
more- Yeah, well, that's more,
Yes, it really,
Both those
it's,
are
yeah,
short-term crisis centers.
really
that-
nice.
Yeah, I'm talking about a
Yeah.
living facility.
Yeah, something that's meant for,
Yeah, long-term.
again, the 1 or 10% that are never gonna really be able to
Mhm.
recover.
I don't think we have it.
I'm gonna talk to Rep. Hall and Senator Lang and just see, you know, what discussions are sitting at the state level, because there's gotta be some, and what committees are dealing with it, and just kind of get a pulse on that, because from a bigger
I'm sure
perspective.
they're, you know, you're talking massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
To build the structure, security,
Oh, yeah.
feeding them,
It
healthcare.
needs to be like a campus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Honestly,
they
to have
probably don't even wanna
different
touch
levels of
looking into
care.
it, because
No,
they're
I'm
sure
afraid
they
how much
don't,
it's gonna cost.
however.
It's the right answer, I mean,
Like
it needs to be a hybrid of what it used to be and what it is now.
Right.
And really, it's the same with, orphanages, I mean, it
Mhm.
really needs to be if anybody wants to claim there's not abuse in foster care,
Yes.
is just insanity.
Just to have
So
a clean,
you need to
consistent
have
place
some
for
kind of
babies to go.
hybrid plan from what it was in the day, that things probably weren't ideally done, to where it is today, where things are definitely not ideal on both those problems.
Right.
Well, we're not gonna solve the world's problems here at this Tuesday's Board of Health, but I thought it was a topic.
these
worth
are
talking.
world problems.
They are. We're really getting at it. Okay, sorry to take you down that rabbit
San
hole.
Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
Any other new business? Okay, let's go ahead and move on, sorry.
Okay, just quickly with my report, NAF forms, everyone should have received the NAF forms. I don't know how many people have returned them. The NAF forms was a name, address, phone numbers. So how many need another one?
I must.
Okay.
No, you already did.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, you were the
You're
first
the
one.
star.
That's what we did originally?
Yes.
I thought that's what we did.
You're on it.
I thought-
So if you guys, you need another one, and then we'll give
No,
it
I
to you?
can print it off.
Are
I
you
just
sure?
didn't
You,
do it.
everybody's good with that? That was
I need
just,
one from you.
okay. That was just a reminder.
I didn't know that's important.
Another thing I was looking at over, the time is some of the accidental deaths. I'm gonna look closer into falls. We've had a lot of falls, and so working with the senior citizens and looking into that, because those are the easier educational things, making sure the elderly have good lightings, good railings, no rugs down, that kind of stuff, so we're gonna look into that with
Do we
some of
have
the.
an increasing aging population though as well? So that number's gonna go up
Yeah, look at baby.
correlatively?
Hear me out. And then motor vehicle accidents, we're saying increasing that, so we kind of want to watch that. Sometimes it can be as simple as, or just looking into them, are they at the same intersection? Or is it young people where you can get driver's ed if they taken driver's ed, or that kind of stuff? So just looking into some of those stats. And I wanted to mention, Olivia, what's really wonderful about Olivia is she's in, is it urban epidemiology? What is it? Where, I mean, what was your background? It's epi, but it's for
Well, no, it was
environmental?
It was just epi. I just happened to take a lot of geography courses.
Okay, geography,
specifically.
epi.
And I got to take urban geography because talking about how cities develop and like the common problems that cities have to face due to how they've developed, and the U.S. is very and like a lot of other places in the world that developed later, as opposed to like Europe, which had centuries upon centuries of urban development. All of our problems are created just because the way we've developed out of our economic systems and stuff like that. Like how all of our cities originally were along rivers because we had to use waterways, but then we started getting like railroads and things like that. But we still see evidence of like most of our big cities are on waterways, even though we don't use it anymore. So like stuff like that, that's like a really hallmark, historical thing. But we also tackled issues like homelessness and air pollution, and like the big thing I like to do and talk about, because I was a public health student at the time, was how do we create cities be more healthy? And there's actually a lot of ways you can do that. There's a lot of ways you can basically like push people to the right path, like without like telling them, oh, you need to walk more or you need to bike or whatever. Like that's it's too aggressive. But like just by putting very beautiful walkways and plenty of parks, by separating really busy roadways from those sidewalks, like by putting like plants and trees, it actually encourages people to be more active in their community. And then by being more active, they also end up talking to their neighbors more because there's more people out, and so it starts networking out further from there. So that's the kind of stuff I was interested in.
Right.
And
I mean, I get so excited to hear her talk, and I wanted her to do this to the board, to be reminded that we have a lot of young people with the knowledge and the creativity and the energy to start looking at doing things a little differently. And what she was talking about, the conference is called nudging, and it's a technique, and you do things without telling people. And so the guy that spoke to us, and he was another research professor, but he had pink paper on the table, legal side paper with cut off marks, corners. So it was more, instead of just having regular, at conferences you have regular white pieces of paper on, everybody was picking up the pink paper. He said, I nudged you to look. And then when on the writing, it had bold, big print and little print. So it nudged you to look at the bold print. And he was talking about that in everything that we do, whether it's how we treat our patients, how we treat our community and our residents, how you can nudge them into doing some of the things that you want them to do, and people are more responsive. And she was talking that way about even roadways, stop signs, things that kind of nudge you into going different directions. Or it's kind of like a piece of marketing too, but he was, it was pretty cool. He said that a guy on a trip took the kids and he put cups on there, told the kids, and he started putting money in the cups, and every time they misbehaved, they took money out. And after a while, at the end of the trip, the kids were behaving because they wanted the money at the end. Here's your money that you're gonna have at the end of our trip, and they just nudged them into doing the right thing. He just quietly did it. But she also sent me articles on multi-generational housing. Very interesting articles. I'll get those things. I think we maybe put it in the packet for you. But it was about how young people say they can't afford houses, and how a lot of people's 20 and 30-year-olds are living at home with their parents. So if we start building some houses that were either large enough with different entryways, or they had some houses that were like back house and the front house, so the generations keep moving. So the people that can afford the front house, you put your kids in the back, let them pay some rent or whatever.
It's like
When
the
they
old carriage
die,
houses,
yeah.
like, whoa, we're going back.
It was kind of cool because you know, old people can't be alone and kids can't be alone, right? So it make it work for everybody, but it was 3 different ones that were great concepts for that, and you can live a good life. Some of the younger people were living good lives with their wives and their kids because they could afford to do other things while they took care of their parents, knowing that they were gonna switch places. And so those are the kind of things, I don't know if even city government or economics, or when they're looking at building houses, and when we talk about housing all the time, and to do those kind of natural, public health things that they do, multi-generational housing, instead of us being mad that we got kids in our house. Plan for it and have your own entranceway and your own area and double lock on the door, so. But it was pretty cool. Again, connectivity, family, what we used to do maybe a long time ago that could have kind of made us healthier.
I could see a great benefit in Olivia, if you were ever willing to put a presentation together for the park board about how you could, do some of the things you're talking about to nudge people into more healthy living, because they are, sitting at the point where they have a few million to spend on our parks. And I don't think they're thinking of it, they probably aren't thinking of it in the way that your background or something that you could teach them about, and it would help them, I think, to better design how they're gonna spend the money, to also make sure it nudges people to health.
Right. It's
So,
a health thing, yep.
yeah, I think they meet once a month, they just met this last week,
Yep.
I believe, so maybe, Ally,
Give us
if you
schedule.
talk to Ally, she could,
Good.
Olivia might be able to get on their schedule.
Cool.
That would be really helpful, they would love to hear that kind of stuff.
And I think that's it. I'm speaking at the faith-based breakfast thing next Tuesday. All of the rest of my reports in there, so. That's
So you're
it.
staying busy.
I'm staying busy. Oh, yeah, and the walk, I'll let you or Sally talk about the walk and talk when it gets to that part. Thank you for coming out. Sally's our walker and talker. You probably lost, what, 20 pounds walking? I'm just kidding. We picked up a lot of trash last Saturday. We did really good. Yeah.
Who has the t-shirt on, is that you?
I got the t-shirt, the walking and talking shirt.
Yeah. And, we just picked out those areas that Christy Durrett spoke to us about a few months ago, that need improvement in Middletown. And, this past week, we started out at, what's the name of the church?
New Era Baptist Church on Yankee Road.
Yes, and walked that neighborhood, picking up trash and stuff. We did have some neighbors come out to say, what are you doing?
And thank us.
And so it gave us a chance to talk to them. I would, in the week before that, we started out at Rosa Parks and did that area. And, that was our first one. But the second one, it did get more neighbors out, and that was, and we did pick up trash. We didn't pick up trash the first time, so, I would invite everybody to come. I think you would gain a lot from it. You were there, that was your first
Yeah.
time
Mhm.
this past week.
It really was just like anybody who wants to show up and just meet other people in the community and walk around a neighborhood, in this case, pick up trash, give us a good kind of purpose. I mean, I just wanna, like, they encourage people to not talk to anybody you already know, right? And so I met quite a few people, had great thoughts about the city and just different things that we could do. And I think everybody appreciated, like, especially your Board of Health member, they would love to have a connection to the city government in some way and feel like they have a voice, right, and can be heard. So, the next one's May 20th at 215 Sutphin.
Yeah,
At-
so Church of Nazarene.
Church of the Nazarene, yeah, so walk starts at 11 a.m., they're kind of setting up at 10:30. It's only an hour, it was
It's
an hour.
easy walk.
Yeah, and the church is big enough, if it rains, we kind of get inside. We'll get inside and walk.
Sit and talk?
Yeah, we'll sit, no, we still have to walk and talk.
Okay.
The little bands that's given out is Restore the Pride Where You Reside, and I don't know if I say surprisingly, but pleasantly surprised, the neighborhoods look good. I mean, it was some spotted areas that needed some help, but, I mean, if you go in there and you start picking up trash and whatever, and you can, the houses and stuff. Didn't you think Sally, Sally said that she was, you're on Penfield? I think the neighborhoods would look really good, but if we can keep getting people out
Yeah,
and
that
cleaning up their neighborhood.
looked really good.
Yeah. So thanks to everybody that did that. Good work.
Okay, medical director, who's doing?
That's it. Chandra can just do the
Okay.
disease report.
So the disease report, that you all have, we had, one Campylobacter, 25 chlamydia, marked drop down to 59 COVID, 3 new Hep B's, 8 Hep C's, and 1 syphilis case reported, and 1 CRE in a nursing facility. And really, as far as the nursing report goes, ditto, because it's been relatively calm on the COVID front. So cleaning up some of that data and continuing to move forward with the vaccinations as we've been doing. Numbers are down, but there are people who are still requesting boosters for, just travel, conferences, own personal thought of protection. So we are still offering those. But other than that, it's a kind of a steady calm.
Thank you. I believe, so now we're all the way to Carla. Okay.
We approved plans for the micro market at Magellan. Angry Chicken on Dixie we approved their plans for remodel. That used to be Ice Cream Dreams, so they are actually doing some renovation and expanding, so. We have approved plans for 3 mobiles, so, I think 2 of those, I'm sorry, 2 mobiles, and we approved the plans for Mr. Hot Dog, which is on Central Avenue, so hopefully we've licensed Mr. Hot Dog, so hopefully they'll be opening soon. And Zulu Bar, we actually licensed, that's a bar on 1207 Central, so hopefully they'll be opening soon.
They have food?
Which one, Zulu Bar? Not a whole lot, no.
Okay. I was just wondering how the Board of Health or Department of Health is involved. Do we always do bars? I don't know.
Yes, yes, we do bars, sometimes they sell limited stuff, so.
Right.
And the septic system that was failing on Central by Bavarian, they are now hooked up to sanitary sewer, so yay. That was a long drawn out process, but now that, so now they're hooked up. We're in the process of licensing our pools. I think we have about 3 that we still have to license, and have to apply late fees for. Most of them like to try to get open before Memorial Day, so we'll see what happens with those. Riverside Village, they used to have a campground. I think they had about 14 sites, so they've eliminated those sites
Where I
out there.
lived when I moved to Middletown.
Yeah, so now they're putting
I
manufactured
lived
homes.
in the trailer park.
They're putting manufactured homes back on those sites, so we only
Ah.
have 1 campground now, which is, River Run. And that's the one on Carmody, you can see it if you're going towards Germantown.
Which also looks like a manufactured home site, but technically.
Technically, they're part,
Maybe.
part camp mobiles, parts, modules, so,
It's a lot better.
yeah. We're just really, with the workforce development grant monies, we're really, trying to, catch up on some training. So, Janae she did a lot of, training, what is
Incident
it?
command.
Yeah, incident command training this month. Sarah, went to had pool training. A lot of this is web-based training, but they still charge you. Virtual, so, just doing a lot of training also while it's a little slow right before the pool season. And I
with the window, and everyone's very responsive, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, anything else anyone wants to add? Okay, I will look into, a joint meeting or workshop with council, and we'll let you guys know for sure. I'm also gonna send a link with the date, the timestamp to the council meeting where we talked about Tobacco 21, so you can know what happened in the discussion. I would definitely watch that, so you, just regardless of whether you're able to attend the workshop or not, it's good to know what was discussed. And then we'll meet next, if we don't meet on the 16th of May, then our next official meeting will be June 13th at 7:30.
But, yes, sorry.
Yeah?
Yes. That was correct. I was looking at the two, times to
Right.
do the things, and I was like, no, yes.
Yeah,
next
the
meeting's
second time would be
13th.
after
Yep,
our next meeting.
You're correct.
Okay, great. Well, then we'll adjourn the Board of Health meeting. Thank you.